As a nurse in the acute care unit, I've seen my fair share of mental health challenges. But nothing could have prepared me for the day my husband David was formally diagnosed with severe depression. In the sterile hospital room where I usually felt so confident, I found myself sitting beside him as a wife, not a healthcare professional, my heart heavy with a mix of understanding and worry. Mrs. Marie Thompson, the psychiatrist, addressed me with a gentle tone that I recognized all too well, the same one I used with patients' families. Given your background in healthcare, you might have already noticed the signs. I nodded slowly, my 10 years of nursing experience suddenly feeling inadequate when it came to my own family. Yes, I had suspected for a while that something wasn't right. My voice wavered slightly as I squeezed David's hand. The past few months had been different. The way he'd withdraw into himself, how his usually bright eyes would turn distant during our conversations. David, once a brilliant IT engineer, sat there in his wrinkled shirt, looking smaller than his 34 years. The contrast between the man beside me and the vibrant software developer I'd married was stark. This year had hit him particularly hard as he struggled with the unexpected loss of two people from his past, his ex-girlfriend Catherine and his former best friend Michael. Their story was complicated, filled with betrayal that had left deep scars. Before David and I met, he and Catherine had been in what he described as a serious relationship. But she had betrayed him in the worst way possible, by having an affair with Michael, someone David had considered a brother. The devastating double betrayal had shattered his trust completely. I should have seen this coming sooner, I whispered, more to myself than anyone else. As a nurse, I was trained to notice these signs, to help others through their darkest moments. But sometimes being too close to a situation can blind you to what's right in front of you. The psychiatrist's voice brought me back to the present. Depression isn't always obvious, even to healthcare professionals, especially when it involves someone close to us. His words were meant to be comforting, but they did little to ease the growing knot in my stomach. David remained silent throughout most of the consultation, only speaking when directly addressed. The man who used to light up rooms with his technical explanations and coding stories now seemed lost in his own thoughts, nodding mechanically as the doctor explained treatment options and medication schedules. As we left the hospital, my workplace, now transformed into a place that held this new, heavy memory, I couldn't help but think about how our roles had suddenly shifted. I was no longer just a nurse, and he was no longer just my husband. We were entering new territory, one where the lines between caregiver and partner would become increasingly blurred. "We'll get through this together," I promised him, trying to sound more confident than I felt. But deep down, a small voice wondered if I was really equipped to handle what lay ahead. The news. Working night shifts at the hospital had become my new normal, but nothing could have prepared me for the news that came during one of my breaks. David called me, his voice uncharacteristically shaky, to tell me about the car accident. Catherine and Michael had died together on the highway, a cruel twist of fate that seemed almost too coincidental to be real. I found myself in the hospital's break room, my half-finished patient charts forgotten on the table, listening to my husband's broken voice through the phone. As a nurse who regularly dealt with death and loss, I was trained to handle such news with professional composure. But this was different. This was personal. "I don't know how to feel, Marie." David's voice cracked over the phone. "They're just gone. Both of them." Just like that. I gripped my phone tighter, my nursing instincts warring with my role as a wife. "I'll come home early. Let me talk to my supervisor." "No," he interrupted, his voice distant. "Finish your shift. I just I needed to tell someone." In the days that followed, I watched as my husband, my brilliant IT engineer, who once spent hours enthusiastically explaining coding concepts to me, began to crumble. He would spend hours staring at his computer screen, but his fingers never touched the keyboard. His usual routine of checking tech forums and working on side projects completely ceased. They tried to reach out, he told me one evening, his gaming controller limp in his hands. Michael sent emails every year, wanting to explain, to apologize. His eyes remained fixed on the paused game screen. I never even opened them. I sat beside him on our couch, noting how his shirt hung looser on his frame. As a healthcare professional, I was already cataloging the signs: decreased appetite, disturbed sleep patterns, loss of interest. As his wife, my heart was breaking. "That doesn't make any of this your fault," I said firmly, my hand finding his. "You had every right to protect yourself after what they did." But my words seemed to bounce off him like rain on a window. The guilt was eating him alive, transforming my once confident husband into someone I barely recognized. His work began to suffer: missed meetings, incomplete projects, until finally the inevitable happened. "I got laid off today," he announced one evening, so casually it was as if he was commenting on the weather. He didn't even look up from his video game, but I could see the tension in his shoulders, the slight tremor in his hands. As a nurse, I understood that grief could manifest in unexpected ways. But watching my husband spiral while trying to maintain our household and my demanding job at the hospital was beginning to take its toll. Each day, I would care for patients, offering comfort and support, only to come home to find David hadn't moved from his gaming chair, empty beer cans collecting on his desk. Later that evening, "Maybe we should consider counseling," I suggested gently one night, my scrub still on from my 12-hour shift. "I know some excellent therapists through the hospital." "I'm fine," he cut me off, his eyes never leaving the screen. "I just need time." But time wasn't healing anything. If anything, it was making everything worse. The breaking point. The changes in David became more pronounced with each passing day. My nursing experience told me these were red flags, but my heart wasn't prepared for how our relationship would unravel. Coming home from long hospital shifts became an exercise in emotional preparation. I never knew which version of my husband I would find. "Where were you?" David's voice cut through the darkness one night as I returned from a particularly challenging shift in the acute care unit. He was sitting in our living room, the blue light from his paused game casting shadows across his face. "At work, David. I had the late shift today." I set my nursing bag down, my muscles aching from 12 hours of patient care. "We talked about this yesterday." "With who?" His voice had an edge I'd never heard before. "That new male doctor in your unit?" The accusation hit me like a physical blow. "I was with my patients, doing my job, just like I do every shift." I tried to keep my voice steady, drawing on the same calm I used with agitated patients. But this wasn't the worst of it. The situation escalated one evening when I stayed late at the hospital to help with an emergency case. David's reaction when I got home crossed a line I never thought he would cross. "You're lying to me." His fist connected with the wall beside my head, the impact making me flinch. The sound echoed through our apartment like a thunderclap. My professional training kicked in automatically. Assess the situation, maintain safe distance, identify escape routes. But this wasn't a volatile patient. This was my husband. The real breaking point came shortly after. During another argument about my work hours, David's hand struck my face. The force of it nearly knocked me off balance. Time seemed to freeze as we both stood there, shocked into silence. As a nurse, I'd been trained to recognize signs of domestic violence, to help others escape abusive situations. Now I found myself living one. At the apartment. "I'm leaving," I announced, my nursing bag packed with essentials. I knew from my professional experience how crucial it was to have an exit strategy. David's demeanor shifted instantly from aggression to desperation. "Please, Marie, I'll get help. I'll see a doctor. Anything you want." Looking at him, this man who used to excitedly show me his latest programming projects, who once spoke passionately about technology and innovation, I felt my resolve waver. But my medical training screamed at me to recognize the cycle of abuse. "If you're serious about getting help, I'll consider staying," I found myself saying, my professional side warring with my emotional one. "But you need to commit to treatment. Real treatment." He agreed, and a small part of me hoped that my medical background would help us navigate this. That maybe I could be both nurse and wife, healer and partner. I had no idea then how wrong I was. Beginning of treatment. David started his treatment program, and initially there were small signs of improvement. As a nurse, I recognized the positive changes in his medication, regulated mood. His anger outbursts decreased, and he started helping around the house again. But one major issue remained unresolved: his reluctance to return to work in the tech industry where he had once thrived. "I can handle our expenses," I told him one evening after my hospital shift. "But I need to see you trying, David. Even part-time work or remote programming jobs would be a start." His response was always the same: "I'm not ready. The medication makes it hard to focus on coding." During this time, he surprised me by suggesting couples counseling. As someone who worked in healthcare, I should have been more skeptical about his sudden enthusiasm for therapy, but I was hopeful. He'd already found a counselor and scheduled our first session. At the counseling sessions revealed truths I wasn't prepared to hear, despite my medical background in mental health support. A significant part of my depression, David confessed during one session, his eyes fixed on the floor, comes from feeling trapped in this married life. "I never really got to experience being single after Catherine. I sat there in my scrubs, having come directly from my shift at the acute care unit, feeling like I was having an out-of-body experience." The counselor encouraged him to continue, even as I saw my marriage unraveling before my eyes. "I need to experience life, to see what's out there," David continued, his voice growing stronger. "I want to live like a single man, but I want the security of knowing Marie is here, being faithful, supporting me." My medical training helped me maintain my composure, but inside, I was stunned. "You're asking me to stay committed while you, what, date other people?" The counselor interjected. "Let's explore David's feelings about this." But my nursing experience with mental health patients didn't prepare me for this level of emotional manipulation. "No," I stated firmly, my professional demeanor cracking. "I won't be your safety net while you explore. That's not how marriage works." Later at home, David's response to my refusal was to sulk around our apartment, acting as if I was the unreasonable one. "If you really loved me," he would say, "you'd understand I need this to heal." As a healthcare professional who dealt with mental health cases, I understood depression could distort thinking. But this wasn't just depression speaking. This was something deeper, more fundamentally wrong with our relationship. Family lunch. At Sarah's house, during what should have been a pleasant family lunch, everything came to a head. I watched with growing concern as David ignored my professional advice and continued drinking despite his medication. As a nurse, I knew the dangerous interactions alcohol could have with his antidepressants, but my attempts to intervene were met with scoffs and dismissal. "How are things going between you two?" Ellen, my mother-in-law, asked during the meal. "And how's your work at the hospital, Marie?" Before I could respond, David interrupted, his words slightly slurred. My depression would get better if my wife understood what I really needed. The room fell silent. Sarah, my sister-in-law and closest ally in the family, shot her brother a warning look. As a lawyer, she had always appreciated my dedication both to my nursing career and to David's recovery. "What do you mean by that, David?" Robert, his father, asked carefully. I watched as David, uninhibited by alcohol, began to twist our story in front of his family. She's just so controlling, conservative, won't let me breathe or heal properly. My medical training helped me recognize the signs of someone about to spiral, but this was beyond professional intervention. Would you like to tell them exactly what you're asking of me, David? My voice was steady, years of dealing with difficult patients coming in handy. When he didn't respond, I turned to his family. Your son wants to live like a single man, date other women, explore his options, while I stay faithfully married to him, working full-time at the hospital and supporting him financially. The shock on their faces was palpable. Ellen's fork clattered against her plate. That's not exactly, David started, but his father cut him off. Have you lost your mind? Robert demanded. Is this what you're really asking of Marie? David's response was chilling in its conviction. Every marriage has rough patches. I'm just being honest about what I need. Some men would just cheat without asking. The breaking point. That was it. Years of nursing experience had taught me when a situation was beyond saving. I'm done, I announced, pulling out my lawyer's card. The divorce papers will be coming. I've already secured my assets. Marie, honey, Ellen started. It must be his medication. No, I interrupted, my professional composure finally breaking. I've spent months caring for my patients during 12-hour shifts, then coming home to care for him. I've supported him through his depression, his job loss, even his violence. But I won't support this. David's face showed genuine surprise, as if he couldn't believe I was actually leaving. We need more counseling. You need counseling, I corrected him. I need to take care of myself for once. Before leaving, I turned to his family one last time. I'm a nurse. I help people heal for a living. But I can't heal someone who doesn't want to get better, who instead wants permission to hurt me more. At the motel, from my small motel room, I listened to the string of voicemails David left on my phone. After years of helping patients through various stages of crisis, I recognized the manipulation in his messages, the oscillation between guilt-tripping and apologies. One moment, how could you do this to me? You're supposed to be a caring nurse, but you're so heartless. The next, Marie, I'm so sorry. Please come back. I need you. My years in healthcare had taught me about emotional manipulation, but experiencing it personally was different. Each message was like a wave trying to erode my resolve, but I stood firm. A visit from Ellen. He needs you, Marie, Ellen pleaded during one of her unexpected visits to my motel. You took vows. As his wife, it's your duty to support him through this. I had maintained my composure through countless family interventions at the hospital, but this was different. Ellen, there's something you need to know, I said, my voice steady. Before I left, David hit me. Would you have stayed if Robert had done that to you? The shock on her face said everything. She never came back after that. 5 months later. Now, standing in my new apartment, I feel a sense of freedom I haven't experienced in years. The divorce is finalized, the house has been sold, and I can focus entirely on my nursing career without the weight of a toxic relationship dragging me down. Through Sarah, who's remained a close friend, I hear that David's depression has worsened. As a healthcare professional, I hope he gets the help he needs. But as a woman who's reclaimed her life, I know I made the right choice. My nursing schedules are still demanding, but now they're mine to manage. I can spend time with colleagues after shifts without guilt, focus on my patients without distraction, and come home to a peaceful space that's all my own. You seem different, one of my regular patients noticed recently. More at peace. She was right. For the first time in years, I'm truly living for myself. The skills that made me a good nurse, empathy, dedication, care, I'm finally applying them to my own life. And that's worth everything.